Hey there, friends. Right, let's talk basic story structure. And this is important because, well, the story hacking channel it's chocked full of tools and techniques that can help you tweak your stories and make them more powerful. But all that relies on you having a strong narrative structure, right? And the good news is that intuitively you kind of get this stuff already, right? You've been hearing stories and telling stories all your lives. Our species has been hearing stories and telling stories for hundreds of thousands of years. So this stuff is wired in deep into our brain. But I think it's really useful to get this sort of visual framework out, because if we can groove it into our brain in a different way, in a way that is around how we communicate, whether it's about ourselves, our brand, our products or services, it can really help you start to refine your messages, start to hone your messages. And the important thing is this is the story hacker kind of method. There are hundreds, thousands of ways to tell stories, I think. If you Google it, you'll find stuff about 3-act structures, 5-act structures, hero's journey. There is a lot of theory about storytelling out there, and I'm not saying by any way this is the only one that works. But what I am saying is that we're here to sort of story hack. We haven't got time to waste. We're looking for fast and efficient ways to improve the stories we tell about ourselves. So this is the model that I've come up with. If you've seen the subscriber video, you've already heard me talk about the story triangle: character, conflict and consequence. And those are the three things that I think that I look for when I'm dealing with clients, for example. Those are the first three things I look for, because characters make it easier for our audiences to empathize with our stories. But the characters need to have a problem, a conflict, because without a conflict, there is no opportunity to learn. And obviously there is a consequence to that kind of conflict. So these are the three main things I look for first, but that's very high level, isn't it? And even though we're talking about basic story structure, I want to go through the kind of the sort of the next level, because I think it gives us the power that we need in our narratives. So your character is living its normal life when something triggers a change, right? So something triggers a change that will throw the world out of whack and throw them into conflict. And this can be an internal trigger. I've seen something and I want it, or it can be an external trigger, someone coming to me and causing a problem. But there is going to be something that happens, a trigger that happens, that throws us into conflict. And then in well-structured stories, in the kind of stories that your audience want to listen to, your character will take some kind of an action that will change the consequence of that story, because that's how we learn, right? I talked in one of the previous videos about how stories kind of connect, simulate and simplify. Well, the simulation part is the learning part. We use stories as kind of flight simulators to understand, to improve our understanding of the world and teach us stuff. So the conflict and the action and the resulting consequence are really important parts of that. And lastly, at the bottom there, we've got change. And I want to draw a distinction between the two stories that we often see operating. And I think it's technique 10 in the techniques, tools and techniques section that talks about telling two stories. But in well-structured stories, again, there is often a kind of external series of events that's going on, and an internal series of events as well. And the change, if you like, is the kind of I usually, in a business sense, I usually see it as the kind of the part of the story that the audience can bring out and generalize to themselves. So when I'm talking about my origin story, the end of that sort of story is the realization really that I can use word of mouth marketing, use stories marketing. I can kind of weaponize stories, if you like, to build a business. And if you've seen that video, you'll know that I spend 10 or 15 minutes talking about how we were almost broke in 2002. We borrowed money and we were almost bankrupt, and we were a couple of weeks away from losing the business, when a client said to me, "We've heard some great stories about you, we just want to go ahead." And that really kind of flipped a switch in my head. And that was, if you like, the kind of internal change for that story. So here we've got those 6 things. And in the next video, we'll make a checklist, which is going to look very like this, surprisingly. And we'll talk a bit about, I'll give you an example of how I structure a story around that kind of checklist. All right, see you in the next video.